Okay, I'm sitting here with William Lightfoot Dowden, and he just had his 95th birthday. And we just finished talking about the Alice Dean boat that he discovered in the 60s that was sunk by John Hunt Morgan after he took his men across the Ohio River. And Bill's going to tell us a little bit about D-Day and Normandy and some of the stuff he was involved in World War II. What can you tell us about that D-Day, Bill?
Well, the first thing, let me say, I was one of the fortunate ones. I wasn't out on the beach getting shot at. I was a master sergeant in charge of a P-51 fighter unit that strafed the Nazis all day. You know, they flew from England. We were stationed right close to Cambridge, England. And the morning at D-Day, they had everybody out before, bakers, cooks, and everybody else doing some odd things and painting some aircraft quick. And so when as soon as the first pilot come back, why, we just swarmed over him. Then we'd already seen all the gliders go over us. And he said just as far as he could see, well, there's boats on the surface of the channel. And I think our fighters flew about 7 missions. Now we had P-47 Thunderbolts, a big radial engine, 2,000 horsepower. That was would have been better for this, but we had already gotten the 51s for escort mission. But on D-Day they used them just like they were, and of course they were ideal for strafing enemy lines and everything else. And so that went on until the Battle of the Bulge happened, and the colonel come in and says, pick out 4 or 5 of your best men and we're going to fly you up in northern France. And I says, well, you can't, we're not going to get back because it's fogged in. You know, the Germans knew that, and our planes couldn't come back and land, but they could take off all right and fly out of there off the runway. So we went up to Saint-Dizier, D-I-Z-I-E-R, France. And there was about a foot of snow on the ground, and we stayed there until they flew every day out of there and bombed the Strait and helped out in the Battle of the Bulge. And then we moved up into Belgium. But the first couple of nights it was around zero, and we didn't have any beds or anything. We just had a couple of blankets apiece, so we lay down on a tile floor, 4 or 5 together, and enough to kind of halfway stay warm. And still we were some of the fortunate ones. The boys up there at that Battle of the Bulge, which was not very far from where we were suffering sure enough, you know.
Yeah.
And so we stayed there till spring. But when they were crossing the Rhine River up at, I know it's a little town or suburb or something, I can't think what the bigger city was, but the town I'm thinking about, we went up, the colonel sent me and 2 men up to get a gun sight that the British had developed, a computing gun sight. My thoughts are that it was called a Mark 14, but I'm not sure that's right. It's other. To get this gun sight for fear the Russians or the Germans might, we had one of these 51s that shot down, and he landed, but you know, the plane belly landed in a field, and we went out in this field, and of course they were firing across back and forth in.
You had to recover that box.
Recover that site, and they sent us up there to get it, and we got it and got it out as quick as we could. And that was pretty interesting. I had a guy named Keith Litton from Amarillo, Texas, at that time, and an electrician named Olson. And but anyway, it turned out all right. And as I say, I was one of the fortunate ones that wasn't being shot at.
What about when you crossed? Just getting over there in the boats was dangerous with all the Germans.
When we went from France, we drove a weapons carrier up through Belgium and Holland into Germany.
Oh wow!
We drove up there, and we had all kind of clearance papers to get past the guard, and that's when we knew the thing was about over, because here had come a guy walking down the road with carrying a carbine, a private, with maybe 150 prisoners. They were all taking them to a prison camp down the road somewhere.
Germans.
They were surrendering, as fast as they could because they knew it was over, and they're doing what they should have done. And but it was we were in Belgium when in France and Holland, and so it was. And then Bill, my son Bill, asked me one time, they were talking about what was the best Christmas present they ever got. I said, well, I can tell you the best one I ever got. It's easy. We didn't have anything. We slept 2 or 3 nights. Well, no, it wasn't really. We slept 23rd and 24th. We slept on this tile floor. And Christmas Day, a big 6x6 pulled in the infantry and gave us sleeping bags and cots. And you talk about having a good Christmas.
Yeah.
And the Christmas night, well, we had a decent bed, for that. And then when we came, then the war, you could tell, was really winding down, and they'd crossed the Rhine, and so we flew all of our equipment and stuff back in B-17s and B-24 bombers. We didn't have enough transport planes and equipment stuff we had over there. Flew that back to our base at England, and I went in and saw the colonel I'd been with since he's a captain, and he said, I said, being a master sergeant and in charge of the army section, I was supposed to come back, fly back. Well, I said to him, I said, is there any reason why can't I just come back with the convoy, and then I'll get to see more of France and, some of that country that I won't get to see probably. He said, do whatever you want to do, and of course that's what I did. I didn't fly back. All I was doing is a few hours right across the channel back to England. But I rode back on a weapons carrier, and we was about 3 days crossing France, coming down, getting across the channel. And
tell us the story about how they didn't think the Colt 45 was a very good weapon when you first got in. When you first went in.
Yeah, everybody that had never done any shooting, most of the fellows that you meet when you first go in the service there, a lot of these boys that grew up never had a chance to fire a gun of any kind, even a .22. So I got in this outfit. I was a buck sergeant, and this old armor he was a master sergeant, and he said, had all these, it was a training place in Richmond, Virginia, and he said, is anybody in here, we're supposed to, the officers, the pilots are all supposed to qualify with a 45. Supposed to qualify. That's not much. That's, just to qualify. And they talked about it. Nobody. I thought there'd be maybe some pistol shooter or somebody, and nobody said a word. And I said, well, I don't know whether I could teach them or not, but I can show you. One thing I can do, I can show them how to do it, how I do it. And so we went out to the pistol range, and one of these officers, he's a pilot, young pilot, about my age, about 21 or so. He said, they tell me that you can't hit nothing with that. You just pull the trigger and you'll shoot right in the ground. I said, yeah, you can shoot in the ground if you point towards the ground. And so I took one of them, put 5-round clip, and then I told the guys pulling the targets, put it on rapid fire. You have so many seconds, fired 5, and then you take that out and put in 5 more. And I fired all 10 of them, under the time, and had them all in the black. Of course, the black's that big around. Now there's a center black that's half as big. Well, I didn't have them all in that, but I had. And then after that, a few days after that, the ratings come out and it made me a staff sergeant. And that way I got to draw quarters, which was $37.50 a month if you were married.
Yeah.
And that's when Dot and I got married. We would have married before the war if it hadn't come. So I called her and I told her, I said, well, if you want to get married, we may be able to swing it. You may have to get a job, but if you want to come down, and so that's what we got, and that was
Wow.
we got married December the 2nd, 1942, in Richmond, Virginia, and then it wasn't. Then when they started forming these cadres to go overseas, they put me in charge of one, and I was a staff, see, already, and I had 52 men, and then they made me a tech, and then it wasn't but a couple of months they made me a master. So my discharge shows that I made master sergeant in 18 months. And that's filed in the courthouse over here too, by the way, if anybody wanted to look at it.
Oh.
So, you know, it usually, and there were only 3 master sergeants, and the other 2 were old Army men, 2 of the nicest men you ever met in your entire life. And I thought they'd look down at me because I had the same rank, but they didn't. I mean, and I knew my job. I mean, I knew guns inside and out. And then after I'd boned up, I'd take a bunch of tech orders and just at night read some of the real technical stuff on, you know, how to line everything up and do all the stuff we had to do. And but my main thing that helped me so much is I had some of the best men that you ever saw in your entire life. Sharp, some of them just do anything and congenial, and if we had a working relationship that I don't think could be improved on, thank God.
Yeah. Well, you moved up quick because they recognized your talent.
Well, I don't know, they just found a country boy that didn't know any better, I guess. But my military, I was in 4 years, 1 month, and 8 days, and I was so fortunate to be in a kind of an outfit. And our group commander, Colonel Christian, was a West Pointer, and one story I like to tell. I had 2 armament inspectors, and one of them was in World War I. He enlisted, lied about his age when he was a kid, and he was born in 1900, so he was 18, 19, or whatever it was. And named Andrew Murphy from Massachusetts, Boston. And when he first got in the outfit, he said he just went down to the draft board, and he had 2 daughters that were married to naval officers up there in the East Coast, and had a son or 2 that were Navy pilots, and one of them got killed while he was overseas in the Pacific. He was in the Pacific. And he's healthy and didn't have any bad habits or nothing, and they took him right in. Of course,